that's another perspective. But I think that part of the reason why we don't want to believe that we are from Africa is because of the stigma. You know, I mean, Freddie can tell you everything that we're taught about Africa is usually negative.
Right.
Disease, poverty, corruption, you know, people running around with no clothes on, lions and tigers, and you know, all these very negative stereotypes. And so, who wants to be associated with that as a form of history? When I say history, that would be the other reason. So historically, people of African descent have been disenfranchised because they are of African descent. And so if you don't claim it, then perhaps psychologically you feel that that is a way for you to avoid that oppression. But you can't outrun it. You really can't outrun it. So I don't understand it, but I do know that, again, historically, there's been a lot of pain that we've experienced because of the color of our skin, which is because we're of African descent. And so any approach we can take to try and lessen the impact of that, I think people try.
Well, and I think that's a good point in terms of how do, at least there's some young people obviously out here. I work with young people at Howard High School and in the theater programs that I have. What can we do tangibly to kind of combat some of that stigma? I mean, we keep saying, you know, black is beautiful. We have a lot of catchphrases that are out there, but it feels like my generation and the one prior has kind of somehow dropped the ball by not continuing that legacy of it and that history being taught to our young people, because this generation has zero connection to all of that.
Well, I would
Is there
say
something we could do to?
One of the things we can do is read a book. I mean, everything, the answers are there. Read a book or go online, get Urban Intellectuals Black History flashcards, you know, join the Sankofa Club. There's the Urban Intellectuals Sankofa Club, which is, well, Freddie can do it better justice, but a subscription of educational materials for our kids. Just read a book. It's in a book, and the more you learn about history, the better prepared you are to understand who you are today and be empowered to do what it is you need to do to be successful.
Well, and yeah, that sounds like a great opportunity when you say read a book, you know, but I'm looking at a population that barely finishes high school, and definitely I'm talking about the black population in particular. And so how do we reach this beyond that intellectual level, or that college degree, or that home environment that says read a book, or making sure that we're putting the phone down and not watching the television as much, or doing some of those other things? That again feels like some of the ball that was dropped in terms of just parenting and making that happen.
Like I believe, I feel you on, you know, the educational level and things of that nature. But one thing that we can't deny about the black community is we have money. Like, we're spending, what is it, $1.3 trillion a year, so we have money in our community. Now, what are we doing with the money? That's another discussion. But I said that because I'm always an advocate to read, and definitely, you know, I like flashcards and all that good stuff. But I think traveling, you gotta go see it. And so instead of going to Dubai and, you know, Europe and France and all of these places that we've been told is so wonderful, which it's not. I don't know if you've ever been. It's not very impressive. Wasn't impressed. But when I landed in Africa for the first time, I was floored, absolutely floored by the entire experience. And when you come back, like, you are different. And you're showing pictures, videos to your friends, and they're like, what? Like, you was where? Like, that's Africa? That's what it looks like? So I think the more and more of us that start to embrace the continent and be in there, and then I just think it kind of spreads from there. I think that's a nice, easy, practical way. And it's not expensive. Like, we're told, like, it's super expensive to go. Like, I'll give you raw numbers, right? So my
Because
father,
they want to go to safari. That's what's expensive.
yeah, well, yeah. All right, hold on. You can pay a lot. Like,
You can have a 6-star.
Yeah, you can definitely do that. But like a real practical example is like the first time I went to Africa, I went with my father. My father's turned 90 this year, but this was 2017. And he had never been to Africa. He was like, man, before I leave this earth, I want to go. And I'm like, let's go. So I just jumped on Expedia and like just typed in, we went to Ghana. So we went to Ghana for, I think we were there 12 or 13 days. So the flight and the hotel, which was a 4-star hotel, cost $1,500 each, round trip. That's flight and hotel, right? Like when you think I'm gonna go to Africa, you're thinking you're gonna pay $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, and it's really, you can, you can, but it's really not that expensive. It's really not that bad. Like, and when you get there, you'll just be blown away, you know, by like the hospitality and the infrastructure that's there. I know it's not everywhere in Africa, but I was impressed with Ghana. Personally, she's been a lot more than I have. So
Wow.
She might roll her eyes on
No,
Ghana.
I agree with you 100%. But what I was gonna add was start with kids. So even though there's a generation of the community, a segment of the community that hasn't finished high school, may not be reading books, we can start with the kids because they are in school and they haven't quite, I would hope, as young as they can go, haven't eschewed the idea of learning. So if we start with the kids and we talk to the kids about being from Africa and the positive impact, the benefits of being African, I think that can help. Sometimes you kind of have to, you can't save everybody, and so you got to go with who you can impact, and I think we can impact kids, and that's why I mentioned the Sankofa Club, because they're focusing on the kids. Can you talk about the Sankofa Club?
The easiest way for me to explain it for you to get, do you remember Highlights Magazine?
Yes.
You remember that? Like, I used to love Highlights Magazine, right? So,
I never do.
yeah, the easiest way is to say that it's a culturally relevant version of Highlights Magazine. So instead of little Timmy, you know, and Chrissy, you know, on their adventures, little Imhotep, you know, yeah, Sankofa, SANKOFA, Club, CLUB, .com. So instead of mailing it each month, we do it digitally. So each month you get a login, an access code, and you're able to log in and then get, every month there's something new. There's like, I think you get 40 different activities. So it's like word searches, vocabulary words, writing prompts, challenges, reading assignments. So we're moving into the curriculum space. I won't say that just yet, but it's a lot of engaging activities that keep the younger kids from 3 to 12 actively involved and engaged. 3 to 12.
And if we do those kinds of things and we distribute them if we distribute them digitally, then that's a way to engage where kids are today, right? If they're online, then let's distribute the materials to them in that way. And I think the onus is on us too, as African ancestry, to create materials for kids that help them to explore Africa. So that's an opportunity that we're.
I think that's really powerful,
Yeah.
especially with the amount of information and experience that you guys have. I think that would be really powerful.
So why do you think it's important for us to know specifically not only what country it is, but what tribe, what cultural background we're coming from? Why is it important?
Thank you for asking that. No, really, because my answer to that is constantly evolving, and it just most recently evolved, and so I'm happy to share my new answer with my soror, Ohio Mega Chapter. I think it's important to know where you're from, because we need to honor that woman who was stolen from her community, who made it through the transatlantic slave trade, the most horrific period. The Middle Passage was the most horrific period world history. She made it through that. And then she made it through plantation living, where she was dehumanized, defeminized, debased, disrespected, every negative thing you can think of. Torn from her loved ones, watched her loved ones being torn apart. She made it through that. She made it through Jim Crow. She made it through segregation. She's making it today through us, through you. There's a woman who is responsible for you being here in this seat.
Right.
She's responsible. Her resilience is the reason that you're at that high school, having those theater arts programs and empowering those young people. She deserves to be honored. Without her, there is no you. And the best way you can honor her would be to speak her name, call her name, and call the names of those who came after her. But we are never going to know her name. But what you can know is what are the beliefs, the values, the customs, the cultural practices, the traditions that her people held. You can know that once you know your tribe. So that's why I think it's important. Are you a parent?
I'm not.
Are you all, are there parents, grandparents in the room, right? Do you want your children to remember you? Do you want your grandchildren to remember you? Do you want their children to know who you were? Well, she wanted us to know who she was. And by finding out where she lived and what she believed, we can do that. So that's why I think we owe it. We owe it to her and to him. There's also a man. There's also a man.
Oh, by the way.
Is she a seahorse or something?
It's a seahorse.
There's also a man. And all the brothers in the room, you have that exact same DNA. You have the exact same DNA as that man.
Who came through it, that a woman.
Yes.
That they.
So we deserve, we owe it to that foremother and that forefather to honor them.
So I've done my African ancestry, and it was wonderful, great experience. My wife did it, but I had a chance to swab my mom before she passed last year, and my dad. So we was able to tie, both sides of our family tree. But I think like we talk about like busy making our ancestors proud, right? So when we think about ancestry, we think thousands of years ago, tens of thousands of years ago, right? So when my mom passed, it made me realize like she's now the ancestor. Like it's not tens of thousands of years ago. It's like right there. Like that's really close. And when you think about time, 400 or 500 years ago, that was a drop in the pan. Like we're aging a little bit now, so we can have an appreciation for how soon that was. That's really recent. So to be able to kind of have an anchor or a hook for your family is like really big. So I found out we're from the Yoruba tribe from Nigeria, and
What's the country?
Sierra Leone.
The
Mende tribe. Thank you, Mende.
Okay.
My wife is from the Time and the Mende tribe, but we're from the Mende tribe. So now we have an opportunity to start reaching back and bringing that culture forward. So it's like she talked about having these experiences, having these things. So now, hundreds of years later, we can retie our family moving forward, as long as I do my job and bring that information back to the family and really keep it going. And mention my mom. Like, if I don't tell my grandchildren, which I don't have yet, and we're not in no rush, tell my boys. But if I don't do my job to make sure that the grandchildren know who she is and what she brought to the family and things that were important to her, it's gonna be lost forever. And then somebody would have to go do that work when all we gotta do is start saying her name.
So I'm being quiet because you're all completely speaking that language. I just started 3 years ago the Chattanooga Festival of Black Arts and Ideas because I was just so tired of us not being visible in Chattanooga, being invisible, and working with a lot of artists saying that they're disenfranchised when it comes to everything. And so I thought this is a great, and that we're not limited to hip hop, or not that it's, I love hip hop and all of it, but we're not limited to that, and that's where people try to put us. On a larger scale, I guess that's what I see the bigger challenge being, is how do we get more people in the space or to understand the importance of the DNA, but also how to reach back and to educate about the past. Because most are when I talk to young people, they, oh, I don't care about history. What I'm living now. What can this do to help me now, right? And so, how do we work towards creating an energy that makes them want to know about the past and not just be in the present?
I giggle because I was that young person. You know, my father would talk to me ad nauseum about history, and I just remember like, oh my God, Dad, like, you know, it's over. Like, you know, I was the exact same person. I just didn't understand. But I just think that we have to make it engaging and relevant to them. And then, but I don't think we have to start with, you know, antiquity. Like, let's just start, you know, 20 years ago. Like, let's talk about those types of things. And I think a really good way would be like the history of hip hop, right? Like, there were some very important poets and artists that came out of this environment. They talked about some really powerful and relevant things. And if we use opportunities like that, we can make it relevant to the young people and then kind of start expanding from there.
So to piggyback on that, if you start talking to people about the history of hip hop, well, we trace the ancestry of Q-Tip from A Tribe Called Quest. And we traced him to the Jola people living in Guinea-Bissau today. And the Jola use an instrument, a string instrument called the akantine. And the akantine was the precursor to the lute, which was a precursor to the banjo, which gave rise to music that then gave rise to music that then created hip hop. So what if there's, I don't know, who's a hot hip hop artist right now?
Kendrick, is that still a thing? J. Cole, all right.
J. Cole, all right. So what if we did a history of hip hop event or digital event, and you talked about all the things you just said, Freddie, and then at the end of it, we revealed J. Cole's ancestry, and then worked our way back. That would be a way to engage young people, hit them with history, and they don't even really realize that it's history.
Especially with J. Cole.
What do you think about that idea? You two are representing, was that a good idea or what?
I think it is.
Okay, cool.
J. Cole would be actually a really good person for that, because then knowing him, he would take that history and infuse it into his music, and then he would really be able to touch the next generation.
Well, we're in Chattanooga, and bluegrass is king. And but when every time I talk to them, I say, well, who invented the banjo? And they just look at me like I'm crazy. I say, you're playing an African instrument. They're about to lose their mind. They don't want to be playing an African instrument in terms of the banjo. But I think still, I guess I'm looking for that mass opportunity to reach as many as possible. Because you're talking about a very creative teacher that would be able to do that. I'm at Howard right now, and there may be, we have over 1,500, and I'm working on a Black History program with them, that's why I'm there. We're working on, there's about 1,500 students there, and out of the 1,500, 90% are white teachers, and these are all Black and Latino kids. And so they're not seeing any Black teachers whatsoever. And so they're not comfortable integrating that kind of connection to history, to the heritage, to ancestry at all.
Sounds like they need some curriculum.
They do. But this is not uncommon throughout all of academia in terms of education with kids, is that's the growing trend of who's teaching our kids.
But I mean, you're touching on something that I was going to say earlier, but you know, just to be blunt, it's a conspiracy.
It is.
This is why. I mean, it's not,
I said it way too fast.
Yeah.
I'm the king of conspiracy.
I mean, but it's a systematic plan. Like the entire world knows the jewel of the planet is Africa, and like we're the only people that act like it's not. And we have the means, we have the education. Like we're the most educated. Well, black women are the most educated group in the country. We're spending 1.3 trillion. I think we're number 9. If we were a continent, if we were a country, we'd be the number 9 country in the planet. And like we're taking all of our money and our funds and our economics and pouring it into everybody else's community instead of coming together and working together. But again, it's a systematic plan. Like it's not an error.
New.
This just happened. They have configured the educational system from preschool. Yeah, I'm getting fired up now.
I know.
One of my favorite books is Carter G. Woodson's The Miseducation of the Negro.
Oh, right.
So in 1929, his first chapter is called The Seat of Trouble. And he says in that book, the moment your child sit down in that seat, he in trouble. Because it's about to be a relentless attack against his personhood, his self, his culture, his history. Relentless. And we take our kids and send them into these schools and act like they're truly getting educated instead of being involved from the start. I went off on a crazy tangent, but
That's not a crazy
It's not.
tangent, it's real.
Yeah.
But I think that's all the more reason for parents, and it's easy for me to say that because I'm not a parent, but for parents to get engaged. The resources are there. You don't have to wait for your child to not learn it at school. There are resources that will allow us to teach our nieces and nephews and cousins and kids about who they are, who we are, outside of school. I went to schools, high school. I went to a high school that had maybe two black teachers. And look at me. So I don't think that not having black teachers, we can use that as an excuse. We have the ability and the power to teach ourselves. When Freddie and I are part of an organization and we sat on a panel that was called The Business of Being Black. And that's what we're in. We're in the business of creating materials, services, products, experiences for black people to learn about being black people. And as black people, we don't have to wait for the system to be in our favor. We can screw the system. We have the power. We just have to mobilize, which I think is your
What I'm looking
question,
for, yes.
is how do we
get that
mobilize? And
mobilization?
the example I gave is a small example, but not if it goes viral.
Right.
I was in a BuzzFeed video that had 1 million views. I mean, little old me. So it can go that viral, and all we need is for one thing to go viral, and then that plants the seed. We can't worry about touching the masses. We gotta start with one. And then two.
It would be nice if you could just start with millions, which would be a movement or a viral, a J. Cole gets involved or something like that, then they could spread it and push it, but we can't depend on that. It's like in business, like, oh, well, if the home run comes through, that's great, but it probably won't, so we just gotta be systematic in our approach and go step by step, house by house, one by one.
So what specific advice would you give to some of the parents, grandparents out here now? What one at a time, with what? What would we start with that? I mean, in terms of the rapper, I'm not familiar with him, right, because I'm old too. But I want to be able to.
My last rapper is
that is. Is there something specific, one thing that they should be doing on a regular basis?
I would, so if anyone knows me, like I'm really fanatical about teaching children, right? So both my children graduated at 16, or my baby is about to graduate. So one went to Notre Dame. I think this one's gonna go to Michigan State. Fingers crossed. I won't even go. But anyway, but I'm passionate about parents teaching their children. Like, you gotta be involved in the educational process. So if we're going to talk about our history, you gotta be involved in that. But you can't do it in a boring manner. Like, you gotta make it energetic and fun. How do you teach 5-year-olds to get excited about math and reading, right? You gotta make it exciting for them. Like, my oldest, this is like the funniest story to me, because his little voice, you know, you wish you could hear those little voices again, but he's like 5 years old, and he ran up to me, he's like, Daddy, let's play math. And I was like, wow, like, I was talking to the wife, I was like, this really worked. Like, we really got him thinking that it's fun, but he enjoyed it. Like, we made it fun, we had games about it. He get the question right, somebody got to run a lap around. Like, we did a whole lot of crazy stuff. We didn't have no money, so we had to get creative and get involved, right? But I think with the history, we got to do something similar. Like, it has to be engaging, it has to be fun. It can't just always be lectures. It can't just always be, you know, gray-haired old men like myself, you know, talking his face off, right? Like, we got to make it engaging.
He's having a good time. He's having a good time.
Oh, well,
Here's why he's here.
wow. I don't think I've ever heard that out of a young person.
So
You
why don't
probably
you,
used to play math.
so are there questions? Or,
I have a suggestion.
Okay.
About what, something tangible that parents and grandparents can do. So, and it's related to African ancestry. So, take one of our tests. The results of our test, if you were to take our test, sister here, and trace your maternal line, mother to mother to mother to mother, that result is going to be the same for everybody in the family who comes from your grandmother. All her children, all their kids, all their kids. And for us as black folks, that's a lot of family members, that's a lot of people. Then you could create something like, I don't know, once a month, the young people have to tell you one thing about that country, one thing about those people. And then you just kind of keep, or, you know, when they come to Thanksgiving, everybody has to say one thing about those people. When you have the family reunion, make the young people create some kind of skit or presentation or something about the ancestry that they found. And then they have to present it to the whole family. Again, one test can generate all of those kinds of experiences. So that's one thing that a family can do. And because the results are shared by so many people, if everybody pitches in $20, no one can complain about the price, right? And you have an activity that engages the young people. Then when they have to do a project at school, I did this, I don't know if my parents suggested it or if I just was a radical child, but whenever I had to do a report, I did it on something black. So if we had to do a report in music, I did mine on old Negro spirituals. So when your kids have to do a project, have them do it on something related to where they're from. That way you're working within the educational system of white supremacy, but you're flipping it so that what they explore, what they have the freedom to explore, is relevant to them. Those are my suggestions.
We're opening night for us at the Theater Center with August Wilson's Gem of the Ocean. And so I passed all the flyers out to all my kids saying, extra credit if you come see this performance. When they left the classroom, they were all laying on the table. Yeah, they didn't just know, and I showed them little clips of the play, trying to build their interest a little bit more. It's a challenge.
Yeah.
It's absolutely a challenge.
And they're high school.
I have
They're high school.
9, 10, 11, and 12, so high school, yeah.
Hey, what's interesting is, like, you just never know what that one piece of content is that could just really, like, turn the light bulb on and change everything. I mentioned when I was growing up, like, my father talking to me about history, and oh my God, I had to be the worst. Right? But when I got to college, actually I didn't get like into Black history hard until grad school. Right? So I'm getting my MBA, right? The Master's in Business Administration, and we had to write this research paper, right? So grad school, like 35 pages, whatever it had to be, like something I've seen. white teacher comes to me and says, Freddie, oh, I'm sorry, the class was a history of economics course, right? It's the best course I ever taken in my life. Like, I would go back and take this course. It was really impactful for me. But he suggested that I did Black Wall Street, right? So this was 1999. And, you know, the internet was just kind of getting going. Like, everybody's like, I don't know if we're using this internet thing and all that. But, I got exposed to it, and I just was blown away. Being an entrepreneur, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur. That's what I wanted to do. So then I learned about this community that, you know, you have all these entrepreneurs that built up 600 businesses and recycling $1, which is more common knowledge today. But in 1999, I was blown away. I could not believe it. But I said that because you don't know what's that one piece of content that can turn the light bulb on and change everything. So coming out of that experience, writing that paper, I literally was going around campus passing out Black History profiles. This is really the forerunner of my flashcards. So I was selling them for $0.25 just because every week I would do a different profile on a different person. So I'm just spreading it all around the campus trying to get my print costs back. But it just turned it on in me, like, this is so important that we need to know our information of people that look like us, that are doing wonderful things, or aspiring in fields that we're interested in. Because you might be looking at becoming an astronaut, you know, but if you don't know Mae Jemison, you might be a young girl that think, oh, Black women don't even go to space, like, it's not even a thing. And then you find out about Mae Jemison, and she's like, oh, that's it, I want to be an astronaut. You know, or whatever the case may be. Ronald McNair, yeah, like, you know, but I think that's why I like to let the children guide themselves. So they show their interests, and then we put things in front of them that hopefully inspires and opens up their minds. And sometimes that could be a piece of history.
But I've gotten to that place because I started teaching about 23 years ago, and I wanted all of my students to get it. And I would go home depressed every day. And then it changed to like, okay, if I can look at somebody's eyes and I see a light, then that's the one I'm gonna go after. And you just keep beating at and going after and working with that one. But you're right, you've got to start small. And not think that you can, you know, do the entire mass of students, 150 of them.
Yeah.
But one at a time.
And I wonder if there is something, I don't know Gem of the Ocean, but I wonder if there's something in Gem of the Ocean that is relevant to today. Like some kind of analogy you could draw, or commonality to something that you know is familiar to them, and kind of get to them that way. When you said that, I was reminded of a friend of mine who is an artist and a playwright, an actor and a playwright, and he's written a play called Sinking Ink, and it's about, it's a hip hop musical. He wrote it before Hamilton, and it's a real hip hop musical. And but it's about a young kid, high school kid, and how he wants to become a rapper, and his experience through high school into college, doing battle raps in a cipher. And I just thought, you know, if his play was here, and the way they do talk backs and that kind of thing, I know those kids, more of the kids would be excited. So, you know, that just means I got to help him get his play. Actually, I think it's going to go to Broadway, fingers crossed. But yeah, so it's probably the type of, but you got to go with what's here, and what's being staged,
and so, but I'm giving them monologues and group plays that are definitely relevant in terms of where they are at this point. I had some input on having the Gem of the Ocean, because we're doing all 10 of his American cycles over the next. I did Great Defenses, and so now we're doing Gem. Next year I'll be doing Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. So we're going to do all 10 of them. So just keeping that cycle going would be great. Questions? Anybody have questions for our panelists here?
What did you say, the online monthly that you could get?
Oh, Sankofa Club? So SANKOFACLUB.com.
What's your name, young man?
Mark?
Mark?
Yeah.
Mark, do you have a question?
No, I
No?
don't have any question.
Did anything, do you know anything about Africa? thing you know about Africa?
That banjos were made from there. I just kind of knew that. I didn't actually know that they were made from, well, Africa.
Nice. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
What about you?
Me, you pretty much said it, but that transatlantic slave trade involves around it in another passage, but also that slavery, it was all started and existed in Africa, and like from that, that's how today's prison system has been redesigned just in Africa, but in a different way by like laboring and inmates like for top revenue companies like McDonald's, Walmart, Starbucks, and American Airlines and other companies, and Avis, the rental company. But anyway, that they basically use over 70% of their goods are manufactured from prisons, and all these inmates are making are 90 cents up to $4 a day.
Who's your mom?
Okay.
What? Like,
And we're talking about like they're just making
right.
All right, Mom.
What?
I can't help him. He's that deep, and I don't know anybody he connect to in the city. Because he has great experience, but I'm limited.
Well, you doing something right.
Who do you know in Chattanooga that you could connect this young brother to?
I know a few people. I can.
What's your name?
Richard Tibbs, you
I can't hear you.
Marquez
Marquez Compton?
Thompson.
Thompson. This is my friend Myron Douglas. He's from Chattanooga. And so I'm connecting you two, all right? So that and your mom. Sorry, Mom.
What school are you in?
I go to Brandon.
Okay, that's a good.
So Myron's gonna help you find somebody, a young brother here who can,
Do they
who
have
Marquez
like
can talk to.
do they have the 100 black men?
like you said.
Oh.
What you said. And see, this right here is going to the
It's a
people
challenge.
that does into politics. They all have their own little things on. But he gets so deep, and I'm like, Mom, don't know. I don't know.
I think that being honest is a good thing. Like, you know, so just be honest and then say, well, teach me.
Yeah, you can learn
You
together.
can learn together. Like, and allow him to lead the teaching. Like, children always want to teach their parents. They always want to show what they know. So even like I always go back to math, but like that's how I taught my kids math at an early age. I played stupid. It just was like, I don't get it. Like, then I'm making mistakes. He's getting to correct me. So you might not be familiar with something, but he can introduce you to different things, and y'all can, you know, maybe it doesn't have to be everything he's interested in, but you know, every now and again, y'all get down into the details together, and I think it'd be a good bonding experience.
Because I don't know if I'm somewhere where he could be amongst his peers. I mean, people that feel the same as he does.
Listen, I
Love
don't know
it.
if
I
he's
love it.
amongst his peers up
Yeah.
here, cause what you just taught, well, I didn't need to know, so
We need
yeah,
to swap
thank you.
seats.
Next year, Linda.
Yeah. He's gonna be up here, right? That's awesome. Yeah. So keep pursuing your dreams. You know. like,
Absolutely.
keep going. Keep digging, man. You own it.
I think you need to know where, in fact, I'm gonna give you a test kit.
Aww.
A maternal test kit, so based on your DNA, you'll be able to teach your mom and her, and all of the rest of your family members where you're from, but we have to make a pact, and we have it on video, so it's gonna be a contract, okay? So the contract is, once you find out where you're from, you have to send me a video telling me some things about the people and how, if you can see anything about those people that you share ancestry with in your family, okay? All
Good for
right.
you.
Well, you mentioned, I mean, people were mentioning 100 black men, 100 black women. We have all of the other organizations that exist that are traditionally black organizations, sororities, fraternity. That's what we're looking for. How do we get them engaged? You would think that they were automatically, and they're different in every other city. In every city, they're different. And so that's a huge challenge, is how, I'm from Chattanooga. I went to Howard and all the high school and Alden Park and grew up on the south side and all of that. There are lots of us here that are intellectually engaged. How do we get to her at Brainerd High School to let them know that we're out here? And there've been tons of mentoring groups and other types of opportunities for that, but we don't get to those types of students.
I want to give you a test kit too. Do you want to know where you're from?
Yes.
Okay. Is this how is this beautiful lady related to you?
I'm his mother's friend.
Okay. Well, it won't be applicable to her.
I
But you
just
can
wanted him to come because he's interested in a lot of things, so I
Yeah.
just brought him because she had to work.
Yeah. So I'll give you a test kit too, but you have to agree to the contract.
Okay.
Did you hear the contract? I'm gonna repeat it. So this one's between me and you. Myron, put the camera on him so we can make sure. No, it wasn't me. All right, so, I'm gonna give you a test kit, but what I require of you is that you send me a video telling me some things that you learned about the people that you share ancestry with, and whether or not you can see any of those things in your family.
Okay.
Is that a deal?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, all right. I didn't answer your question, sorry. Yeah, I don't know how you mobilize communities, that's outside of my scope.
It's difficult,
Yeah.
It's very difficult.
very
Okay.
difficult, especially in this area.
I hear that, like, y'all say that a lot. Like,
About Chattanooga?
About Chattanooga.
Yeah, it's
I'm
a-
gonna say
it's a weird place.
Nashville, Birmingham, Knoxville, Atlanta, everybody's moved except Chattanooga.
And I've lived in all those places, and coming home is a cultural shock to me.
It is.
I was in Connecticut for 6 years. I lived in Birmingham. I lived in South Carolina. I lived in London, and I always come home because my passion is I want to make a difference in my own home, right? But I come and I feel like I'm hitting a brick wall about all of it. Even with the Black Arts Festival, no support from any of those organizations we just named in terms of those kinds of activities. One of my projects is I want to raise enough money to buy your kids and test as many people in Chattanooga as I possibly can, and then start little communities of those tribes.
Oh, wow.
Right, and so part of the Black Arts Festival is in June, so it's a Juneteenth celebration, which has never happened in Chattanooga.
Right.
We don't have a Juneteenth. I mean, we've had little ones here and there, but nothing on a bigger scale. And so I'm raising it to a different level in terms of having this Juneteenth celebration. But I'm gonna raise the money, and I want to get as many kids as I can. I'm gonna test as many mothers as I can, because like you said, then that will show that we have all, everybody they're associated with will be part of that. And then create these little communities of tribes within Chattanooga. So that's,
A lot of places don't have Juneteenth celebrations.
we don't, yeah.
Well, we do now,
Right.
because this is your third year, second year?
Third year this year.
Third year, yeah.
But we had a paper published about the removal of the Negro from downtown Chattanooga. A professor did a study from, he was at TSU, and he did a study about what's happening, and we can see it. I mean, every day, the white flight that happened in the 60s, and now they're moving back. And the gentrification is removing all the black people from downtown Chattanooga. And nobody's like having any problems with it, because, they're upfront that this is the community that we want.
Like,
That's what listen, I'm from Chocolate City. I'm from used to be Chocolate
I know.
City.
Yeah.
And it's happening there too.
It is,
Yeah.
gentrification's happening
Yeah.
everywhere.
so again, like, we're back to,
We
this is
are.
systematic.
It is.
This is planned,
Yeah.
this is on purpose. I think a lot of times, like, we don't want to say that. Like, we want to shy away from that and act like things are so different now than they used to be. But it's not. Like, the white flight, when they put up the projects throughout all our communities, it happened all across the country,
Yeah.
like,
No, it's-
all at the same time. When they started running those freeways,
Mhm.
they was running
Dividing.
freeways through the black community, right through our business district. This happened all over the country. This
Yep.
is a planned thing. So now that they're coming back, it's all over the country. Detroit, I'm from outside Detroit. And I don't know if y'all ever been to Detroit, but if you go now, like,
It's entirely different.
it is crazy. A couple of years ago, there's this boat out in the water called the Princess. So you can do like a midnight cruise or whatever. So me and a bunch of friends went, and we get off the boat at midnight, downtown Detroit. And this little white girl is walking alone with one of them little dogs with a with like a vest on. And I literally almost passed her. I couldn't believe that she was in Detroit. And she's walking around alone at midnight. I said, oh, it's over. It took the whole city. And now it's, man,
Totally different.
totally different.
Totally different.
Totally.
I made sure that when I got ready to build, I built downtown.
Mm.
So I'm part of the population who still lives in the ML King district.
And I'm not getting rid of
We
you.
have the best.
I'm not going anywhere.
I'm not
Yeah.
getting rid of
Streetwise. But it's all right.
Yeah.
you. That's gonna be a trend.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to share observation. Now, we live in the Avondale community,
Hmm.
I live in Glenwood.
and they just recently
Built.
built our center. And it's like an institution.
Yeah.
Yes,
It's
it does.
great, it's morbid.
It looks like
But
an
you know, and
institution. It
you
does.
watch the summit, you like you're going to heaven. But I was like, it is.
What's the institution? What did they build?
Institutional
Right.
grade. It's
Rex-
institutional
Oh,
grade.
Rex.
But it's great, it's like,
Oh, okay.
And I think, and because I've been doing a lot of work with the city of Chattanooga lately, but I think the problem is the people that we chose to represent us on those committees
I was there at a lot of meetings.
who did not speak up and say, hey, that looks dark, or anything. Like the whole cement seats, because the bleachers are cement in the new gym.
Showers up under the seat.
They had, but they had people, we had representation on those committees. But our committee members did not speak up for us.
That's what's wrong with Chattanooga.
And so now when it hit the fan, then it's the city did something wrong. And so the city's taking the hit, but the hit really belongs to the committee members who were there to represent us, and they didn't do a good job.
And it's just right there on the corner.
Yeah, it's on the corner.
Dang.
Where the entrance faces the traffic.
Yeah.
But we can't go through the entrance, we have to go through the back. But there's a
See what I'm
door in
saying?
front.
Go to the back.
Again.
Yeah,
Wow.
we still go to the back door.
I'm just saying.
Wow.
But yeah, but that's what that's why I wanted you here, is because even if they didn't show up, people now know you. People now know about the cars. They now know about the kids. Because before, I mean, I'm still running into people and we have quiet conversations. Like, yeah, that's good what you're doing. I really think that's great. It's about time. But then publicly, it is what it is.
They don't wanna show up and be counted.
Yes, sir.
I wasn't gonna say nothing, but my mom and my brother decided to say something.
Go, Marlon.
I close my present get paid. So, I work with Bird and stuff like that, and I help around the city.
You do.
And I do a lot within my community. And so close my present get fed, what that means is that if you're sitting on a committee and you're not saying anything, so how do us elected officials, what do we know what to do? So we're giving this grant money and stuff like this from the state, but we're not getting input from the people, and we're getting hell about it. It's nothing wrong with taking hell and heat. That's just a part of life. That's just part of life. In life we have situations and circumstances, but the problem is that when you don't say nothing, we can never do nothing, and that's what's wrong with the African American community. We are so scared to speak up to these white folks, and we sell our soul to these white folks that we will never meet again, and we will never see again. And so that's my problem with the city council. We got a lot of people running for mayor. We got a lot of black people running for mayor and stuff. And it's a great idea, but Mom said I'm into politics. I'm a politician. No, I see myself as a community servant before anything. But we have to, as a community, we must stand in unity. We don't need all these organizations, all these little. We don't need the go big brother, big sister. We don't need this. We don't need that. What we need to do, we need to stand up together and let's form one big organization like this right here, and let's just ride with it, because we're wasting money, and the money is going nowhere but to the white people. And we get so upset and so feel like, oh, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. The problem is that, the problem is not them, it's within ourselves. It's the flesh. It's the flesh. The flesh wants us to do something, but the spirit tells us to do a whole different thing. And so that's just me. I don't know why the camera on me. That's just me, like, Miss Bullet right, my mom right, my little brother is right. So what are we gonna do as a community, as the strongest community inside of the whole entire universe? Because this land was taken from us.
Yes.
We owe nobody anything. My parents tell me you don't have to do nothing but stay black and die. So what are we going to do as the strongest community inside of the nation, inside worldwide? What are we gonna do instead of sitting inside these suits, sitting inside these offices, pretending like everything okay, and kissing the white man's behind, because it can't go on. The country will never go stronger. Representative Favors said last week, it was this week when we had MLK Day, she said that the African American community is not a minority. She doesn't know why people continue saying that, because a minority means minor, and the African American community is the strongest community inside the whole entire universe. That's coming from Representative Jordan Favors. That opened my eyes. When we say unity, we're not talking about 2 or 3 people. We're talking about everybody. I'm talking about I think it's a shame that that when we have a problem or a conflict with another black individual, we continue to hold that grudge in meetings and stuff, and public appearances and stuff. When the white folks, when they have a problem, they settle their stuff behind closed doors, and when they go out and speak, it's like you never know they have a problem.
That's so true.
You never know they have a
That's
problem.
true.
Because they mask that, and they play it off real cool. It's just like that. But we go out and speak. You can tell I got a problem with this another Negro, because I can't stand him. I'm not even gonna shake his hand. It happens in the White House all the time. Trump just walked past somebody the other day, not shake his hand because he didn't like him. We got all these rappers kissing his behind, and it's not going anywhere. Money talks and BS walks. I want and that's. I'm gonna stop talking.
Good.
I'm gonna stop talking.
Let it go, let it go.
It's just a lot that needs to be done, and like it's not happening. Not because people are not only speaking up, because people's heart is not right. Your heart you can have the right mindset. I have buried a total of 10 kids, and my mom is a witness. I have been 10 uses at the age of 17 as a young minister, as a young preacher, and it kills me that I have to preach these kids' funeral because nobody's speaking up, nobody's helping out, and the parents want to act like the kids are all cool and dandy, and they not in gangs. And the truth is, these kids are staying on the street after 12 o'clock in the morning. They got school at 5, and they all doped up, and they carrying a gun to school, and we wonder what the hell is going on inside of our community.
Yes.
That's what pisses me off. And I'm sorry, I'm just speaking facts. I wasn't gonna say nothing. But we need to stop thinking like our kids are not inside of these organizations and grow up and face reality and really help them out.
Absolutely.
We have the resources. We just need to go get it. You're not gonna be spoon-fed anymore. You're too old for that. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm heated now.
No, I appreciate.
What's wrong with the organizations and people in office, blacks in Chattanooga, is we still got that attitude of, if it's not me doing it, I'm not gonna take part.
Right.
And then we brought up, Reverend Vivian said it so eloquently when he spoke at the last time they invited him here for a Martin Luther King, ML King event, that Chattanooga is still letting the white man buy their vote with a bottle of alcohol and a pat on the back. And that's why this city has not moved like other cities, because of the fact people we put in office, those same people you saying, that we talk to and we try to get, they turn and don't do what we ask them to do. And we do. We hold grudges and we end up not participating in events. And that only hurts us. That only hurts us when we don't participate. There are people that are holding offices that are good people, but then you have those that go the other way, and we got to come together as a people because we just do not do things together.
One thing I've pledged to do, I've been on the budget for outcomes, and what I know about the ones who will step up and apply for things is they don't know how to apply. And it's not that they don't have good ideas, is sometimes they are replicating what's already been done, and then they are not following the process because what we have to do is we have to understand how to play the rules to the game, because the money is out there. But we act like we should be deserving of it. Since I'm the only black person applying, then I'm not gonna answer all these questions. I'm gonna tell you what I want you to know, and you should still give me the money, and it just does not work like that. It doesn't work like that. And so after the budget has been announced for this period, I'm reaching out to some people, and I'm going to talk to them about grant writing, because the money is there. It's just that how we go about it is just not the right way.
Dr. Page, what were you gonna say?
The brother here, he just sparked a thought for me, which is, to me, everything that you all are saying, which I've heard in other communities, funnels down to one thing, is we have to feel good about who we are. We don't feel good about who we are. And I don't know if you heard me say it on one of the videos you watched, but the reason we don't feel good about who we are is because we don't know who we are. And the reason we don't know who we are is because of the system of white supremacy designed our experience for us to be completely disconnected from who we are. So until we know who we are, feel good about who we are, and understand everything that came before us that makes us who we are, we're gonna continue to be in this situation. We're just gonna continue to be here. We need to understand that we created law. We created physics, the study of physics. We created language. We created every art. We created all of this. That's who we are. And once we understand that, we can work together, because there's nothing to fight over. Because there is nothing to fight over. They've created these conflicts.
For a
Once we
reason.
Right.
For a reason.
So once
So
we take,
divide and conquer is the
Right.
number one rule of war, right?
so take them out of the equation.
It's number one rule.
If you know who you
Divide and
are,
conquer.
take them out of the equation.
Divide and conquer.
But it requires a critical mass of people knowing who they are. And that's why I wanted to give these two young men test kits, because they're gonna know who they are. And they're at least gonna have to know 5 things about who they are. Right. I said something.
She went up to
now
5
5.
now.
I can't put these.
You quantified that.
Yeah, we have to quantify.
They gonna load you up in
Right,
there.
right.
But that's what I 100% agree, because if we look at if we just look at how we labeled ourselves throughout history, from black to colored to Negro to Afro-American, African-American, we've been
whatever.
searching for an identity in this
Identity,
country,
yeah.
because that was ripped and stripped from us from 400 years ago.
And this is the
it.
consequence
These are the
of
consequences.
not having an
That's
identity.
exactly right.
And even if you don't take our test, you don't have to take our test. You can still research who we came from. You can go study ancient Egypt, Kemet. All the answers are right there on the walls of the temples and the tombs. It's there. So you don't have to get a DNA test. I want you to, because I think it's more fulfilling for you, but you don't have to.
See, and you know that, and this is, so they used to draw the map not to include Egypt as part of
Of
Africa,
course.
right?
And they
Because
still
they couldn't
like
believe
teaching
that black people could have that kind of civilization and knowledge, and that never got,
And they
well,
still-
Egyptians
they-
are Africans. I was like,
no,
yeah, they are.
I disagree. They absolutely believe
Oh, wait,
that we
yeah,
can
that's
have
true,
that
yeah.
degree of
They
know
knowledge.
that's
They don't
true.
want
That's
everybody
right,
else
right,
to
yeah,
know
right,
that.
right.
Yeah,
But
no,
I-
they
yeah.
know.
Yeah,
I wanted
they
to get
know.
back to the young brothers. Like, I love this past. What's your name, brother?
Marlon.
Marlon?
Yes, sir.
Nice to meet you, brother. I'm Freddy. But your passion and energy poured out, and like that's what we need. Though.
Yeah.
We need more of that. So like, what can we do? Like we were kind of talking about that. Like if you think historically, all of the movements that have sparked in this country are centered around us. Even like when you go to the islands, has been from people your age, not mine. It's the youth that turns over, that changes everything, that starts the movement, that expands it. So it's our responsibility to get out the way and support the young brothers and sisters that's ready to make the difference. Because we got the money.
But see,
They got the energy.
but that is the other challenge
Right.
too, because when I lived in Birmingham, the same thing was, so if you didn't Martin Luther King, nobody wanted to listen to you. Right, and so you're right, we have to get out of the way and mentor this group of young people
Well,
that
even
come in.
think about King. King, I mean, he was young. He was this brother's peer, not my peer, you know, like.
But what I'm saying is that those who did are now old.
Right.
And because they were so oppressed and didn't have that opportunity, it's hard for them to let it go. I mean, the city council thing, you shouldn't be 75 running for city council. I mean, really. 70,
Yeah, but
anything,
I don't
60,
know.
anything.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Black Panther Party for self-defense, but I think you should study those young people. They were in their 20s, and they created a national phenomenon that's going on. Now, I'm not, anyway, I don't feel like it's a terrorist organization because they never killed anyone, but it was a political organization, and they really built strength around the community. They galvanized the community. They got involved in the politics. They were defending their neighborhoods. They were the free lunch program is created out of this organization. The dentists that come to your school still this comes from this organization, and these were people who were getting volunteers of the community who didn't have anything, right? But 20-year-olds was organizing all of this around the country. So I would, if I were you, I would like for you to study those individuals because they were politically astute.
Yes.
Huey P. Newton had a PhD. They never like to talk about that. All they show is the brother with the guns, which, he's strong and you got to defend your community. Everybody should have that right? We're in this country. You better defend your community. But the brother was, Kwame Ture, all of those brothers and sisters involved were they were political monsters. So it was something that is definitely in your
So
wheelhouse.
we're getting ready to celebrate the 60th anniversary of the sit-ins here in Chattanooga, and the sit-ins were done here because there were no HBCUs, so 30 high school students from Howard High School went down to 3 different department stores in Chattanooga and did the sit-in. They were 17, 18, and they changed, just by doing that one action, they changed, and the lunch counters opened up at that point. But I'm going around saying, did you know this was the 60th anniversary? No, and I'm talking to Howard students saying, Howard students went down at class of 1960 and sat in at Woolworths, and 3 months later, all the counters in Chattanooga opened up, desegregated.
Young people.
Young people.
Young people.
Young people, absolutely.
So
But I think we
our
have to know where we
generation
come
gotta
from.
support the young
That's
people.
the power, is being able to identify and say, I'm from here. Because that's the power. That's totally the power.
And it's the power because then it's not just that I'm from here, but what does that mean?
Yeah.
What are the characteristics of people who are from here? What are the accomplishments of the people that are from here? If they did it and I'm from there, then that means I'm capable of
Yeah.
that as well.
I'm seeing all this hair going on now, and I'm like, well, that's from this tribe. Let's go through this book. I'm showing them pictures like, this is how they've been wearing their hair for hundreds of years, guys. This is not new what you're doing with your hair, right? And then I talk about the whole dreadlocks. Where does no idea a Haitian rebellion, the whole Rastafarian movement. But those kinds of things, I think, add to that whole idea about
Even in Kemet,
Even in
like
Kemet,
on the
yeah.
walls, like you could see that they were wearing dreadlocks then, or you trace like the Olmecs down in Central America. Y'all ever seen those big stone heads? Like, they're huge, but like if you look at the back, they got cornrows.
And the hieroglyphics on the,
right, and the Mayan civilization,
It's all there. Other questions? Ideas, comments? Y'all have any last parting words or words of wisdom that we can all live by? Huge pressure.
I think in closing, I would say we are very powerful people. And the reason that our neighborhoods are being gentrified, the reason that we are being disenfranchised politically is because those on the other side know how powerful we are. They are validating our power. We see it as being emasculated, and but it's because they're afraid of our power. And so I just want to encourage everyone to walk in your power. Don't let other people steal your power and your sense of who you are. I haven't.
I guess I would just really echo that, but I just know, like, the passion and energy that I get from history just really motivates me to do more in my community, in my life, in my business. So the more and more that I learn about people that look like me, that have done tremendous things, it lets me know that I've been playing small, and I need to play bigger, right? We gotta play bigger. So I just think that the history puts that on the young people as well. Like, young people they got expansive minds, they're always dreaming big, but they need to see representation of people that look like them doing these things, and let them know that it's okay. In fact, dream bigger, dream bigger. But I think while we're trying to galvanize ourselves here collectively in the States and in the Western Hemisphere, we need to tie back to Africa, because the growth that's going on, we're gonna get left behind. Like, what is happening in Africa is fascinating. They said over the next 30 years, like 300 or 400 million middle-class people are gonna be created. Now, if you think about that, the Industrial Revolution happened here in the United States a couple of years ago, and it wasn't 100 million people. It was like 50 million, or I don't even know if it was that many when that was transpiring. So you're about to have something that's 5, 6, 7 times larger that's happening on the African continent. And literally trillionaires are gonna be made out of a result of this. And we're over here playing small, acting like it's not even that.
No connection.
No connection at all. But a reason you don't see, Chinese people being accosted in the news or shot and killed by the police, because China will come and deal with them if you're gonna mess with their people. Like, we don't have a nation. Like, we don't have a connection to the rest of the world that says, all right, y'all gonna keep shooting, we're gonna cut you off from Africa. We're gonna destroy all ties and economic connections. Like, those sanctions really mean something. Like, particularly in an area where the largest wealth explosion is happening. Like, they don't really want that, but we don't even want to tie that knot. So I just want to encourage us to not only work to tie our knot here, but to man, we gotta tie back to the motherland. Like, Africa got all the resources the world needs, and everybody understands that, it seems, except us.
And I think the whole Wakanda kind of is an exaggeration of how those resources are would be there, and South Africa taking back land, and Ghana welcoming people in as citizens, and I think all this is happening.
It's happening.
It is happening. I'm ready to go. Thank you all so much. That's
yeah. So yeah, it's so.
Thank you for having us, Linda.
I'm thrilled. Like, I heard them. So we are a part of the TSP family, and it was my first time ever being in that setting. And I heard the two of them talk, and I immediately went to both of them and said, "Can I invite you to Chattanooga?" I inboxed her, and I think I asked you on the spot, but I just know that there's a void in our city, and that exposure is one way of getting there. Is people don't know here what's going on in the rest of the world. And I love what you were talking about, the expansion in Africa. Like, they are some of the most resourceful people, the community I met in Cameroon. Because in November, I found out about the Car people through African ancestry. So they're at war right now, so I couldn't go to where they are, but I was able to go to Douala and spend time there, which is the economic capital of Cameroon. And the Manu people knew of the Takar people, so I was able to learn more about them from the people there in Cameroon. You can't trade that experience. I mean, I can't even put into words how, if you actually go, you actually see what Africa really is like. It is not huts. It is not barefoot people running wild. There are no animals chasing people. I mean, it's nothing like my Tarzan view of Africa. That was my exposure to Africa. But then actually going and spending time there is why I thought it was even more important, because like you were talking about our ancestry, the most pivotal moment in my life was learning that Sedge and Lorinda Taylor came from slavery and bought property in Kenner, New Orleans, right outside of New Orleans, and were business owners. Like my great-grandparents actually came out of slavery and owned business and property.
Wow.
That was empowering for me. That was like, okay, I'm letting their legacy down. So I had to, at 53, step up my age of what I was doing. And that's why LSMB became, that's why all this became, is because I am just making my ancestors proud.
Thank you all very much.
Yeah, thank you for coming. And please take pictures and tell somebody about your experience here.
So I need your, contact so I can get you your kits.
I would like to have a